That's time. We'll go ahead and get started. Uh, there we go. First, before we get started, if you haven't logged in or if you haven't joined the Facebook Evidence Management Community Forum, we would both encourage you to do that.
Absolutely.
That's a great way to get plugged in and build community and get answers to your questions, not just from James or myself, but from evidence managers literally around the country. Uh, there are over 300 people that have signed up. It's just been kicked off in the last few weeks. It was born out of COVID induced just something to do, some way to move forward and not just kind of succumb to the quarantine environment. And that's really how this happened as well. So I would encourage you, if you haven't joined, go to the Facebook community forum. There is a link. I've posted links in the chat window. The first 5 links. One of them is to that Facebook Evidence Management Community Forum. I would encourage you to join that. If you haven't, we'll make another plug at the end. But we would love to see this be something that evidence custodians and evidence managers, take ownership, take it over. This is intended to be for you and a forum for you. We just want to create a platform and give you a place to find answers to your questions. And today, this is session 2. So if you missed last week, going to it. I just lost my ability to speak. If you missed last week, this is the second session. Today, we're going to be talking about the riveting topic of policy and procedure, which I actually love. We're also going to be talking about automation, technology, and digital evidence. Last week, we kicked things off. If you missed it, it's no big deal. You can catch it online. We've posted the session notes. And the session notes for this class, if you look at the bottom of your screen where it says handouts, there should be a PDF that you can download and follow along with the class. So that's hopefully something that you can use as a resource to follow along. And I want to make sure my levels are up. So also want to make a quick shout out to Tracker Products. This is free training. It is absolutely free to you, but free isn't free. This training is made possible through our partnership with Tracker Products. Would encourage you to check them out, visit and learn more at trackerproducts.com. But they like the Evidence Management Institute, we've just decided we're not going to sit around and do nothing while we're sequestered as a result of the
Yeah,
pandemic. Let's go do something positive. Let's make something happen. So
absolutely.
I want to get on another little soapbox really quick. One of the things that's really cool about this training is we have almost 500 people signed up from all over the United States. We've literally got people in 42 different states registered for the class. We've got a couple of Canadian provinces represented. We have DC. So there is wide geographic representation. But if you look at the map on your screen, there are only about 12 or possibly 13 evidence associations or communities for evidence managers at the state level around the country. So chances are, if you're on this training today, you reside in a state that may not have a state association. And I don't want to beleaguer the point, but there is no better resource for evidence managers and evidence custodians than a local association at the state level where you can come together with other evidence managers who deal with the same crazy state laws that you do. I know James came from or is from California. He is currently
Still,
in sunny California. Uh, and CAPE is an amazing organization, and they are
Cape is
statewide. They have chat. Tell us about CAPE, William.
Cape is just great. I mean, just a quick story. Being in the evidence unit for over 22 years, I didn't get involved in any of the associations in the beginning. We have 14 at the time, 17 staff members in our unit, and if I didn't know how to do something, I go ask Marilyn. Marilyn's been around for 30 plus years. She's not there anymore. She retired. But the concept was, if you don't know how to do something, you go ask the older folks, right? So it wasn't until I finally attended my first CAPE meeting that I realized that the majority of agencies is 1 or 2 people, and that's it. So when that's the case, who do you ask? You go to your boss, your sergeant, and he tells you, oh yeah, just it's a disposition. You just sign right here. Just go ahead and handle it. No, That's not the right way. They don't always know the answers of the issues that we deal with, right? So once I got involved with CAPE, I found out what an amazing and great organization it was. I became involved on the chapter, the Orange County chapter. There's 9 chapters in California. They're all regional, and those 9 chapters make up the overall association. And then there's a state board that oversees the 9 chapters. So I worked on the local chapter and on the executive state board, and I completely loved it and enjoyed it.
And I had a very similar experience here in Texas with our state organization, Tape It. There is just no replacement for a state or local organization that can help connect you and help you solve your own problems. That's why we've launched an initiative in states where there aren't organizations. One of the things that the Evidence Management Institute likes to do is we like to create and build new organizations. We don't want to run them, we don't want to own them, we don't want to have a part of it, but we do want to help you get started. And if you're in a state where there isn't an association currently, there's a link on the training class webinar below, but we'll facilitate a network, we'll host meetings, we will help facilitate getting organized, we will fund the filing, we'll advocate and encourage you on and advise you as long as you want us to. But the goal is to create 20 new state evidence associations that are independent and autonomous around the country. So if you're in a state that doesn't have one and that interests you, please check out that page and give us a shout, because we would love to help create some new organizations this year. So today's agenda, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get through the entirety of it. We just don't know. James and I have been on the phone this morning, kind of going through the program, and there is a lot to pack in. I know that I teach a 2-day class. James teaches a class over multiple levels, over multiple days. So we're trying to pack all of this into a 7-hour class. And it might not be possible, but we're gonna go down in flames if we can. So we're gonna try to pack just as much as we possibly can into this space, because we really feel like it's important. We feel like it's a great time and a great resource, and we hope for this. We hope that this becomes something that people are able to use moving forward, and gives people a good baseline of training. We're going to talk today about policy and procedure. We're going to talk about automation and technology and digital evidence. And at the end, we'll have an optional question and answer session uh, where we kind of go through questions that come up. So jot them down in your notes. If you have questions as they come up, we'll answer them at the end. We're going to try to power through this presentation without questions until the end, just because we're recording it for people to watch later at their leisure. So I got a message. Oh, nothing on the
Yeah, I'm
screen.
trying to.
If you
Yeah, finally, I'm trying to respond back to a few people.
Okay,
So
okay,
excuse the typing here.
all right. Well, James, you man that. If you see something, say something, because I'm gonna plow through just like
Absolutely.
nothing's going on. So this is session 2 out of 7. Last week we did an overview of the program and discussed some fundamental principles of evidence management. Today we've already mentioned we're talking about policy and procedure and technology. Next week will be intake and packaging, and then you can read for yourself all the way through session 7, which is easier to read than it is to say. But we're going to try to give you a great baseline of information for running an evidence room or being an evidence custodian, regardless of where you're at. Uh, that being said, just a few housekeeping items. We're going to upload this and it will be available online 24/7 as soon as we can do that. The link would be available through evidencemanagement.com on that training site. We'll try to make that available to you. We'll also post it on the Facebook community forum. Uh, every session is going to be about an hour of content. At the end of the course, and I think, James, you had some questions come in about the course exam. There's not an exam at the end of each session. There will be one exam that covers the entirety of the 7 training sessions and a completion certificate as a result. So if you have feedback, if you have questions, if you have comments or concerns, you can email me at sean@evidencemanagement.com, or James, I didn't put yours up. We should do that next week.
Sure.
But people know James, so he gets their messages.
Yeah, I hopefully will now.
Yes. So session 2, couple couple of notes. The links to the class notes, they should be in that webinar window. If you can't reach them there, please send us a message and let us know. There are other resources that we're going to mention or I'll refer to during the training class today. Those are actually going to be available through the evidence management website client page. There's a link there as well. Just some sample policies and sample documents. I'll also post the notes for each class session early on that client site. It's not a marketing deal. That's just as soon as I finish, and I finished the notes for this class yesterday. As soon as I'm done, I'll post them on that site just to have a place where you can go to find them early. If not, we'll always post them here on the webinar window as well. So this class, again, it's like a drink from a fire hose. And today we're just going to drink in because there is a lot to go over. We will continue to hit things. And just keep in mind, this is an extremely condensed class. It's not a certification class. This is an edification class. This is just for you to learn about evidence management and learn the principles. Uh, it is something that we're trying to provide a baseline of knowledge and information for evidence custodians. If you've never been able to go to training, hopefully this is a place where you can receive some quality training based on standards and best practices that are consistent throughout the industry. It is a very fast-paced class. I normally don't talk this fast for this long at any length for any length of time, but we're trying to get through a lot of material. So that's why you're not seeing it sped up at twice the speed or on fast forward. We're just trying to get through a lot of material. I'll tell you a little bit about me, and then I'll have James tell you about him. I am the executive director of the Evidence Management Institute. I've been doing that for about the last 2 years. I'm also an adjunct faculty member for the Caruth Police Institute, which is a partnership, and someone's calling me probably about a car warranty or some other thing I
Do you
don't
need
want.
solar?
Yeah, exactly. Well, they could save me on my insurance. I'm also an adjunct faculty member with the Caruth Police Institute. That's a police leadership training partnership between the Dallas Police Department and the University of North Texas. I am retired from the Carrollton Police Department in Texas. So, to answer your question, I used to be a cop. I haven't always looked like a homeless man, but I have not shaved in a long, long time, and I'm very happy with that. My former experience, I supervised our property evidence unit and the crime scene unit at Carrollton. I was also a street supervisor. I spent a lot of time just on the streets as a street cop. So I've got a lot of diverse experience. I was on the board with TAPIT, our state association, which is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about starting state associations because it's an irreplaceable resource. I've also spent time on the board of directors with IAPE and taught their classes as well. And many, many years ago, I was an assistant principal and teacher. So that gives you my existence in a nutshell. Let's hear about James.
Let's hear about me. I'm just a ordinary property evidence guy. Worked in the property evidence unit for 22 of my 27 years with the Orange County Sheriff's Department here in California. Um, you know what? Just like you, I've been involved in the state associations. I've taught a training class, co-founded the chain of custody here in California. Served on many different boards with CAPE on the local board, like I explained before, and on this at the state level too. Also, fentanyl exposure, risk exposure, subject matter expert. It seems like Orange County was kind of the ground zero for the fentanyl crisis, at least in California. And so, you know, just like anything, you don't intend to become knowledgeable about something, but when it hits in your own backyard, then you've got to get up to speed in order to save lives and get on board. Just one other thing I mentioned, I did was an instructor for California Post for a couple of years teaching the evidence management course, and that was a really fun class to teach. But overall, I'm just an evidence guy. I know about this much about evidence, and I think that all of us could probably sit here and teach this from our own experience. But it's kind of good to just hear it from someone else and kind of reminds us of some of the things that that we do on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you another kind of cool thing. I mean, I didn't know James before, what, 2 weeks ago. And it was really as a result of that Facebook forum. I am not a big believer in Facebook. I had an account for like 20 years just because I guess that's what you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
but never checked it, never used it. Well, when we started this, I thought this is really cool. I'm gonna open another account and hop on there. And I saw what something that James posted. It was the a video that we're going to watch today, and it was just amazing. And I thought, man, this is really cool. People are doing amazing, cool stuff in evidence management around the country. I wouldn't have known about that had it not been for that Facebook post. So I reached out and found out that James is the co-founder of Chain of Custody, which is an evidence management training group in California. We both do the same thing. So hey, James, let's teach a class together. And that's how we wound up on the same screen today. And so maybe Facebook is cool because cool things happen. And I think
Yeah,
that
just a parlay on that, Sean. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think everyone would agree that some of the things that we have in common, like with a mission statement, I think people would agree that it's super important to try and establish elevation to our industry. I think for a long time we've kind of just sat in the wings as a support function of our agency, and I don't know. I can maybe speak for the folks that I've spoke with about trying to garner a little bit more respect, professionalism, and I think our missions align with the fact that that's what we're trying to accomplish, in addition to kind of providing awareness for the chiefs of police and sheriffs. It would be nice if we could get them a little more involved with us, as well as creating a career path for evidence folks.
absolutely. I mean, we James and I are both in lockstep. I mean, my mission, the reason I exist, the reason that this is interesting to me is I want to change the culture of evidence management, not just in Texas, but across the industry. And I know that James does too. And I think that one of the ways to accomplish that is by getting people together, by building community in groups like the Facebook forum, in training classes like this, just elevating the industry because we want to ensure that justice is done for all the stakeholders in the process. And that only happens if you have conversations and do things like this. So, without any further ado, we'll talk about policy, procedure, and documentation. I know if you're sitting at home right now, it's probably not the most riveting thing that you could imagine talking about, but it really is fundamentally important. I mean, good policies, and good procedures are fundamentally important to the success of your agency. And some of the things that I thought were universal, that were just everywhere, aren't. So, we're going to discuss those today and make sure that we're all on the same page. Just to recap from last week, I believe that evidence management operations should be established by and documented in and conform to very current agency policies and procedures. If your policy is not current, if it's not documented, if it's just a practice, then it doesn't really exist and that doesn't protect you as an evidence manager. Policies establish authority and duty and values. If you are not authorized to do something in policy, then you're walking on thin ice. That's why it's absolutely critical to have our authority established in policy and spelled out in policy. Because if it's not written down, you're not going to be supported when that decision comes into question. And it's incredibly important that those authorities or that authority is spelled out. Procedures are a little different. They provide guidance and instruction. That's what procedures are all about, providing guidance and instruction. There is a huge difference. So when it comes to policy and authority, that's what when policies are basically about authority and uh, values, procedures are about what to do. So when we talk about the purpose of policy, agency policy establishes the foundation for boy, that's easier to say,
Sustainability.
sustainability for evidence management operations. It gives you an idea of the values that your agency or your organization espouses. It gives us an idea of the commitment to the integrity of evidence at your organization. Uh, Policy related evidence management should give stable guidance on foundational issues, establish that authority, and define the structures and relationships that help you do your job. I There are two policy elements that if you don't have in your policy, I would encourage you immediately to try to get these adopted. One is a right of refusal, and the other is a compliance mandate. A right of refusal is just an enforceable provision that states explicitly that evidence custodians, you as an evidence custodian, you have the duty or the right to refuse evidence that's been improperly submitted. There is a disparity in many agencies. In a lot of agencies, the evidence control or evidence management function is a civilian position, and the officers submitting the evidence are a sworn in a sworn capacity. And sometimes there's a disparity there, and it's very important that evidence custodians be given the authority, the duty to refuse evidence that's improperly submitted. That has to be in your policy. It can't be a function of personality, and it needs to be a right that extends until the officer has fixed the problem. Now, that's all well and good, but those right of refusal policies need to be accompanied by a procedure that shows you how to resolve those issues. In the same way, a compliance mandate is just language that requires people to comply. It gives a shall. You shall do this. And it's a line in the sand. Now, what does that look like? Here's a sample policy. This is from the Lower Cletusville Police Department. Right of refusal. The property evidence section staff shall have the right to refuse any evidence submission. And then it goes on to spell out the conditions for which they may refuse evidence. And it gives that little compliance mandate at the bottom of your screen. Officers shall take immediate action. You need very specific language that compels people to act. It needs to be written into policy, because if someone doesn't do what they're supposed to do, we've got to hold them accountable. And you can't really hold them accountable if there's nothing in policy, no mechanism in policy that compels that.
Absolutely. Hey, Sean, just to kind of parlay on that too. I know I touched on this a little bit last week, but I think sometimes we get a little too building of animosity with folks that you get the same repeat offenders that are having the same issues with property, getting improperly sealed, improperly packaged items. I think that's actually a good opportunity for you to, during that right of refusal, instead of like, puffing the chest out and saying, why can't you figure this out? This is like the 5th time I've had to explain this to you. I think it's a good opportunity to explain, what our role is, right? I mean, we're there to, as a support service function, to assist patrol and investigation. So I like to use it as a learning opportunity. And some of the guys that work in our unit are what I think just true professionals at using that opportunity to become educational and explain to them that we're really just trying to look out for their best interest and keep the property and the evidence safe as it comes in. And
Absolutely.
start that chain of custody early. Make sure everything's tight from the very beginning.
Yeah, those relationships are critical. I mean, you want to be protected by policy, but you don't want to lead with policy. Nobody likes people to be officious. You have to do this because it says right here you have to do it. You can get a lot further with a great relationship than you can a policy mandate
Absolutely.
all the time.
Absolutely.
But by the same token, you want to be protected by that policy, because some line in the sand has to exist. So we believe that all agency policies should be published, distributed, and available to everyone, and that when published policy is updated or changes, that there is an acknowledgement of receipt, that you have to sign for the policy and date the date that you received the update. Now, this seems like a pain. It seems like a ridiculous, stupid thing to ask. But when you're trying to hold someone accountable for not doing something that they're supposed to do, you have to be able to demonstrate that you've told them what to do. That's just a fundamental principle of, I mean, we can't hold people responsible for things that we can't be certain that they ought to know. And one thing, and James might speak to this a little more, one of the things that I've noticed as I've been going around the country doing training and consulting is that policy should be drafted locally to meet agency specific conditions and requirements. And that's not always the case. Uh, it doesn't matter if you're not great at writing policy, but there are companies out there, and I believe that Orange County might use this service as well, that writes this generic policy for police agencies, and then they send it out. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, Lexapol. Yeah, it's just a formatted template for that element of law enforcement, and it's very subjectional to your agency, your region of the country, your state. So a lot of times the agency will adopt that, but make changes to it to reflect the proper policy and procedure for their agency. So, and that's what we do as well. But you
Yeah,
can find you can find evidence in a plethora of different areas within our department, from the Alexa pool to a field operations manual to our policy and procedures. So you just really want to make sure they're all connected.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the next point, which is cross-referencing and indexing. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, just basically what I was saying. So, first of all, who writes policy for your department? I mean, you would think that you would go to the source. The person doing the job would be the best person to write policy. But with our agency, it's an administrator, someone a lieutenant or above would be the one writing policy. So, if they're a good policy writer, they'll come to you and ask for your opinion on stuff. Hey, does this sound good? Can you fill in the blanks on any of this? And that typically is the best way, in my opinion, to write it. Usually, uh, we're writing new things that come up on a daily basis, things that change in our legislation, and we just want to ensure that not only do we change it in our policy, but we reach out to the rest of the department to make sure that the field operations manual and the MOU, everything else that covers that specific topic, is addressed as well. The worst thing that could happen is if you're having a compliance issue and you show them right here in the book where it says you will do it this way, and they come back with another piece of published literature for your department and say, well, over here in this one it says this, so I'm stuck. How do what do I need to do? So those are kind of embarrassing.
Absolutely. And those policy manuals can get pretty diffuse and spread out. So that's why it's really critical to have an index. Uh, this is, I mean, some of that is beyond our control, but it is a
Absolutely.
really important function of policy. So now let's talk about, and there is another uh, telemarketer wanting to talk to me. Awesome. I should have just taken my watch off. The purpose of procedure. Now, this is going to seem oversimplified, but basically, a procedure prescribes the specific and approved manner for completing a task successfully. Procedures establish a performance expectation. When you write a procedure, there is a right way that you have in mind that this particular task is going to be performed. There are going to be certain things that are accomplished in a certain prescribed manner, and that's what procedures do. So, what do we cover with a procedure? This might seem like another oversimplification, but basically anything that you want done right, you need to have written down in a procedure. Any task or any process with a performance expectation needs its own procedure. Now we can get too granular and we can extend that logic out. Uh, there is an end point, but it
Yeah.
really needs to be pretty comprehensive. I believe that if you want someone to do something right, if you have an expectation that somebody's going to do something right, then you have to define what right is. You've got to define the right way of doing it, and that's what procedures do. Not only do you have to define what right is and what right looks like, you've got to teach them how to do it right.
Yeah.
And then you have to go back beyond that and teach them in a way that they can learn. And there should be an R in lean. I'm going to go ahead and point that out because I wasn't thinking. No,
Yeah.
actually, now it's correct. Teach them in a way they can lean. That's what I meant to say.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you want to teach them in a way that appeals to their learning style, and then show them where to go for more. Chances are an officer that is packaging, you know, black tar heroin, if you work in an area where there's not a lot of heroin traffic, that might be something that they do once every year, especially if they're not a hard charger, tip of the spear type. Uh, that might be something that they don't get exposed to very often. So when it comes time for them to package a substance like that, they're probably forgot because they're humanoids and they have limited brains just like the rest of us. I would have to go look it up myself. You want to show them where to go for more instruction, and you want to make that available to them and easy. And we got a pretty cool resource that we'll show here in just a second. I'm just trying to keep you interested and keep you on the line. Uh, but there's definitely a way to do that. So procedures should reflect actual current practices. If your procedures describe things that your agency doesn't do, they're worthless. They're trash. You should throw them away. Because if it doesn't reflect actual practices, then you've got a document that is utterly worthless. If you have a procedure that's not followed, then there's no point. I mean, it's just taking up space and gathering dust. Um, So those should be updated and published for any changes or processes that change. Those publication dates should also be accomplished or accompanied with an acknowledgement of receipt. So we believe that there are three absolutely essential procedures for every evidence management unit. Three baseline procedures. One is an evidence submission manual. An evidence submission manual is part packaging guide, part procedures manual. It should walk a submitting officer or an investigator through the entire process of collecting evidence in the field and submitting it to the evidence control or evidence custody or evidence management unit. That evidence submission manual is for any employee that submits evidence on a regular basis. The second critical procedures manual that needs to exist is an evidence management unit operations manual. There needs to be a definitive resource for evidence custodians who work at your agency to figure out how to do their jobs. How do they accomplish intake tasks? How do they accomplish moving evidence or transferring evidence to the lab? How do they clean out the lockers at the end of each day? All of those institutional knowledge pieces need to be captured in that unit operations manual. It's incredibly important that those things exist. How do they run a barcode scanner? All of those little issues need to be captured in that operations manual. Most agencies have some form of evidence submission manual or a packaging manual or something even more inclusive. A few less have an operations manual. But one thing that I would encourage every agency to have at their disposal is literally a disposal manual.
Huh.
It is really important to have a disposal procedures manual for a couple of reasons. And this is for everyone. For officers that authorize and approve the disposition of evidence or anyone that has an involvement in the disposition process, they need to know what to do and how to do it. Officers should be able to learn how to research their own cases to determine whether a case has been adjudicated or not. The only way that that can happen reliably is to teach them. And that needs to be included in your disposal process and procedures manual. That manual on the back side needs to include the actual disposal procedures. How do you get this item out of my inventory and finally disposed? How do I actually physically accomplish that? So those are three absolutely essential procedure manuals that you need to have in your shop. I would encourage you strongly to do that. If you're not familiar with the disposal process or procedures manual, there's one on our website behind that client page. You feel free to log in or join an account, or not join an account, sign up for an account. Keep those behind the site just because it's easier than leaving it out there on the interwebs for all to see. Uh, Other recommended procedures, any
Come
specific
on, Sean.
technical equipment.
Huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey,
Uh,
no, come on, Sean. Be realistic. I mean, we barely have time to teach our officers how to the proper intake and packaging process. So how are we expected to teach them how to send disposition for all their items and run it on the find out what the case status is as well? Can you give us any helpful hints on that?
well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love, and I mean, I
I'm putting you
love
on the
that.
spot, buddy.
No, if you'll look at that disposal procedures manual, the one that we've got on our site, it walks you through an officer's step-by-step guide on how to research a case. Now, it's specific geographically to one location, but the
Sure,
process is the same. There are a lot of agencies, well, my officers can't research cases, and we'll talk a lot more about this when we do dispositions a
sure.
little further down. But it is incredibly important that officers be involved and make intelligent decisions on evidence disposition. The only way to do that is to teach them. I believe that it's a quality control issue as well. A cop ought to know if I've made 10 DWI arrests, I should know how many convictions were secured as a result of those arrests. If I've arrested 10 people and they're all let go because my paperwork is terrible and my case is terrible, that tells me about my quality of work and something that I need to address. So I
Sure.
believe there's a very specific business reason for having that as a part of your disposition process as well.
Okay.
So other recommended procedures, specific technical equipment. If you use a barcode printer and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're working in patrol or you're working in the evidence custody unit and you don't work at 3 o'clock in the morning, rather than getting a call, it's much better to teach the officers how to change that little ribbon or how to put a new roll of paper in your barcode printer label machine. So having those types of specific processes documented just saves you sleep, literally. So,
Absolutely.
um, well, now let's make it all this work. I mean, we've got, let's say we imagine that you have an amazing policy manual. Your procedures are all specifically laid out. They're unassailable. Well, now we still have to communicate with people. And I'd like James to talk about what he's done at Orange County to actually transition and translate written policy and written procedures into language that is understandable. And James, I'm going to switch the audio so eventually we can hear the video.
Sure. Yeah. So first and foremost, our policy and procedures manual is way behind. I think our post recommends to take a look at your policy and procedure every year and see where you're lacking. Unfortunately, California legislation moves so fast and things change so fast, especially with digital media, sexual assault evidence, marijuana laws, transient property, fentanyl, the list goes on and on and on. You get where I'm going. That it's hard to keep up with the policy and procedures manual. So one element that we looked at is trying to think outside the box and try to make something that helps the officers, because we saw that we were spending a lot of time on sending out emails for right of refusal notifications and then waiting for those folks to come to our office to respond. Takes us away from our daily duties to have to grab that item that was improperly booked, packaged, or sealed, take that up to them and have them make the corrections and spend a little time with them to educate them on what they did wrong and how to improve it in the future. So what we came up with is what we call a booking kiosk. Now, at the time, my son was 11 years old, and I came home from work one day, and he had put together a whole remote control circuit board, soldered it, and the whole 9 yards. And I was kind of amazed at the fact that an 11-year-old would be able to do something so technical. So I asked him, "Hey, son, how were you able to put this whole thing together? It's very impressive." And he said, "YouTube, Dad. Everybody watches YouTube." So that gave me the idea to create these instructional videos on packaging and sealing. We're still working on the actual manual for booking in, but you can put a variety of information on that booking kiosk, which is just simply a computer, a flat screen computer that's mounted. We have 14 different collection locations. So that was a kind of a hard pill to swallow to get the administration to sign off on putting in 14 different computer flat screens at all the different booking and collection locations. But they bought off on it because I guess they thought it was a great idea. So we made 10 videos, which are the most commonly misbooked items. When I say misbooked, that could be either packaging or sealing issues. So I think Sean's got one of our videos that he wants to push through. Go ahead, Sean.
Hello, Station 18, SSO James Nally here with a little guidance on packaging. But before we begin, always remember, use your gloves when packaging evidence. Let's talk ammunition. If it has gunpowder, it's ammo. I'm not talking BBs, pellets, or paintballs, or even airsoft. The key to ammo is, what's the purpose of booking? In other words, is it evidence, safekeeping, found, or simply for destruction? When booking evidence, you'll need to package the item with new, unused packaging materials and label placement for the following items. Ammo cans are simple. Using the same clear packaging tape, affix the tag sideways on the side of the ammo can and affix the label on either end of the container. Utilize the same process for the larger boxes. For bags and envelopes, use the traditional staple method on the top edge of the flap and affix the label. Don't forget to initial, date, and time the seals, as well as the property tag in the lower left-hand corner along with your bin. As always, should you find yourself without proper supplies or needing more information to complete a task, the Property Evidence Unit can be reached for questions or assistance at 714-834-6483.
All right, Sean. I think we got the gist of it there.
Friday.
So the video
Okay,
is a little jumpy, but I think you got the general purpose of it. We kind of shortened the video down quite a bit so that we could get through it quickly. But it gives you an idea of what we're trying to convey to the officers. And I do see a lot of our deputies playing the video and kind of going through it, especially with those items that they don't book on a daily basis. Narcotics for some is a item that they don't see every day. Syringes, firearms, transit property, bicycles, tasers, biohazardous, liquid evidence. Those types of things are the ones that usually stump people, and we get them and we get the right of refusal issues on those.
Yeah, and to put that, is my audio back up? Is this working?
Yes.
Okay. To put that at their fingertips where they can just kind of scroll through a menu and pick a video to watch, I mean, you're much more likely going to have that happen than you are. And
you're a popular guy today.
I tell you, I even turned my phone off, but my phone keeps attacking me from different angles. But to have those videos at their fingertips, I mean, they're probably not going to dig into a policy or a procedure manual and look that stuff up, but they probably could watch a 30-second video that's going to explain things to them succinctly and visually. I think that's a really effective strategy and a great tool, and I'm a huge fan.
Well, Sean, thank you. I just want to make mention, though, that it's obviously not it's not an easy task to create those videos. And luckily, I have the fortunate ability to work with an agency that has a video unit, came out and helped me once I wrote the scripts. But just remember, it could be something as simple as getting out your cell phone and running it through, having a coworker, like in your infinite amount of time, but have a coworker video you doing it the right way. I mean, if you do one a week, before you know it, you have the whole booking kiosk at your disposal.
Absolutely. And I think, James, I'm going to make a quick executive decision. We're going to bump the digital evidence portion. So if we're not going to have time for that. It is 2:43. We're trying to keep this to an hour. We'll try not to make it a 47-week class, but I think we can pack it into next week. But I would like to finish and discuss automation and technology before we finish this session out, because I think it's really critical that we build a case for automation. I'm not trying to build a case for automation necessarily to convince you. It's important that we learn how to build a case for automation for the executives that control the budgets that we are subject to, the resources that we compete for. The reason automation is important is because automation helps evidence units meet the needs of the justice system. You work in an environment and you perform a function that requires accuracy, it requires precision, it requires detail. And if you've been on the streets long enough to remember filling out paper property tags like I filled out when I first started, if you brought a case in that had 25 pieces of evidence, you were filling out 25 little pieces of paper and filling that on a paper property sheet, and that is miserable. So there are multiple time-consuming tasks that are associated with it, and they're each critically important in terms of detail and accuracy and precision. It's just math. That stuff is going to fail the more quadredundant and redundant that it becomes. Evidence management operations are rarely staffed at levels that would enable the unit to complete all of these functions given just manual processes. So with those two things in mind, and then when you consider that paper files, they're just a mess. They're difficult to manage. You can lose the paper, and once you've lost a piece of paper, it's gone forever. You can get paperwork separated. I have missed things or lost things in paper files and dog cussed those files for weeks until it surfaced. There is a better way to do things. I don't even discuss really how to manage paper files or how to do evidence management using a paper file system because it's a bad idea. So I would much rather spend my time helping you build a case for automation rather than discussing how to do something backwards and weird. There are three words that I like to use when I'm building a case for automation or with respect to evidence management in general: efficiency, effectiveness, and sustainability. Those are the three things we use to measure everything we do. Does it make us more efficient? Does it make us more effective? Does it help us become more sustainable? Can we do what we do with the resources that we've got? If the answer is no, then that's not a good solution for us. We want to leverage technology and automation resources to make us more efficient, to make us more effective, to help us be more sustainable. And we've got to look at this as a cost value. I mean, does it cost to automate? Does it cost to buy hardware? Does it cost to buy software? Absolutely, there is a cost. But we've got to measure those costs appropriately. We've got to measure those costs in light of the personnel hours that we save as a result of deploying that technology. We've got to measure those costs in terms of how much more efficient are we at disposition as a result. We don't have to build new facility space. There are costs, there are actual physical costs that automation can be measured against, and it is a much more efficient use of government resources to automate than it is to build something or to hire somebody else. And it's a lot easier to get people to say yes as well. So, what does effective automation look like? Well, it means it looks like you're more efficient, you're more effective, you're more sustainable. It is kind of combining technology, hardware and software, different storage medias, different infrastructure items, great policies and procedures. But at the end of the day, automation needs to make you faster, better, stronger, more sustainable. Your
Okay,
agency should
Kanye.
be improved. You go ahead.
No, no,
Oh, I thought.
I was agreeing
Oh,
with you. Absolutely.
okay. Sorry. So what does it look like? You're more efficient. You're more effective. And it's got to work for your agency. The same solution is not going to work across the board for any two agencies. Everyone is unique. Find the solution that works for you. But you kind of need to know what good automation should do. And a good automation system, I call them evidence management systems. They should facilitate the automation of all evidence management processes. They should provide controlled user access, and there should be one person in control of that system that can assign and control out those user rights. Effective automation, a great system. And there's a difference most of the time between a records management system and an evidence management system. A records management system is great at managing records. They are not all the time great at managing evidence. So if you're trying to evaluate your system and trying to take a look at what do I need here, what can help me become more efficient, these are the automation features that I would encourage you to look at and make sure that your system is capable of when you're evaluating your automation at your agency. One is a secure chain of custody. That's I mean, that's a bedrock piece to any equipment. How well does it preserve, store, record, and track chain of custody? How granular is it? How accurate is it? How easy is it to replicate? Effective automation systems are paperless. And when I say paperless, I mean sans paper, no paper, not paper that you file in another file and paperclip. I mean, truly paperless, where you're performing transactions paperlessly. Now, I know that there have been agencies that have been hit with ransomware viruses and they've had paperless systems and they lost everything. So there are a couple of other technology considerations that are important to put in play here. But generally, a paperless system is the way you want to go. A backed up paper system is not a good thing. You want one single comprehensive database. If you've got evidence in paper files and in the old legacy systems and in the new database, then you don't have any comprehensive database. You need one single repository with all that information in it. All those paper files, all those legacy files should be in one single comprehensive database. It is painful to accomplish. I know that from experience, but it is worth it because all of that information is in one single database. Effective automation is great because it provides data entry effectiveness and efficiency. It eliminates those redundant data entry steps. And for officers, it's a dream come true. I mean, if you filled out, like I said, those 25 uh, evidence tags by hand, automation systems take that away completely. I mean, the officers directly enter the items or information into the system. They produce barcode labels. They package the evidence. They submit it. And I know that James can probably attest to this too. As a former English teacher, I assumed there was only one way to spell the word Glock. But if you look through a database of officer entered information or property sheets, there are like 1,000 different ways to spell Glock.
Black gun.
Uh, yeah, exactly. Uh,
Yeah, I've seen that one.
so we want to control those fields, and automation provides that capacity and that capability. Effective automation systems are barcode based. They enable barcode scanning of items and places and people and all kinds of other data points. Now, there are different types of data transfer technology, but for evidence management right now, the best way to accomplish that is a barcode. It's a one-to-one relationship. It's readily available technology. Uh, it works. Now, we will continue to track future trends and discuss that. But for what I teach right now, I teach barcode scanning as the industry standard. Effective automation provides automated labeling. It is incredibly difficult to read labels that officers have written. If you've ever been through a property room and seen those old handwritten labels and tried to decipher the language, the case numbers, anything from them, it's virtually impossible because officers are not good at writing stuff. And automated labels are a dream. Uh, Effective automation provides advanced reporting and forms generation. If you're transferring evidence from you to you're releasing it out in the field or you're releasing it to its owner, that can all be accomplished within that system. Same thing with task notifications. Officer screws something up, that data needs to be tracked along with chain of custody because that's important information about that item. An effective automation system is going to track that stuff and can keep it contained within the system. And the last six things that effective automation provides, it's got to do a lot. Disposition requests and approvals, all of that stuff should come through, flow out of the system. When a case is eligible or when it's time to review a case for disposition, that needs to be an automated process. If it's not automated, then your disposal rates are going to suffer as a result. Effective automation facilitates evidence movement and release. How easy is it to release items in the field or to a person? That's all self-contained within the system. A couple more features: RMS integration, good evidence systems integrate with records management systems. They play nicely together, they talk with one another. I have not found too many RMSs, and I am open to being proven wrong, that do evidence management well. When you create a records management system, more than likely your expertise is in managing records. We need more tools at our disposal in order to be successful. And that's why we advocate each of these automation elements when we make recommendations for looking at software. And now you added an additional wrinkle of digital evidence. I mean, that's something we didn't have to really deal with 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Maybe I'm dating myself, but it is a present condition and issue that we're all going to have to deal with at some point, and we all deal with currently. So last two things that effective automation should do for you: inventory and audit automation. Effective automation systems turn inventory processes into something that can be handled in a matter of days. Even if you've got a huge operation, like James has a huge operation in Orange County. I don't know how long or what technology they bring to bear, but with effective automation in place, and after that first initial painful inventory, those inventory processes become faster. They become more manageable. Uh, Effective automation provides that. And the same with auditing. You should be able to do all of that internal within the system if you've got a great system. And this is my last preaching topic on effective automation, but I believe in data driven decision making. Data speaks the language of police executives. They understand and they resonate with quality information based on facts, based on math. Uh, Without those types of data points, it's very difficult for a police executive or anybody that makes decisions on budget how to allocate resources. It is incredibly important that your system be able to tell you at a moment's notice, how much money are you storing? How many firearms do you have in your possession? How much dope do you have in your dope locker? How many items have you disposed of this week, the past 2 weeks, the past 6 months, the past year? The same with intake. All of that information needs to be readily available to you, because without that data easily synthesized in front of you, it's difficult to take action with it. So quality automation systems provide that, and they do it rather remarkably well. Last three things we'll talk about are just technology that's available for evidence managers. I mentioned we're gonna skip through and we'll add the digital evidence. We'll begin that next week. End of cycle, the day of the personal computer and the little PDA device is almost over. Now you can still see them in police departments throughout the country. Heck, you can still see CRT, cathode ray tube monitors in certain police agencies. So you're still going to see this stuff around, but the technology is becoming obsolete. Barcode scanners, signature pads, document scanners, those are becoming obsolete technologies. For any agency that's ever experienced a malware or a ransomware attack or any other type of viral computer attack, they will agree with me that local network storage, applications based on local servers, are going the way of the dinosaur. Now, the T Rex was a fierce dinosaur in his day, but he is dead now and he can't hurt us anymore. It's the same principle with local network storage and local servers. We used to believe that you had to have all your data behind your evidence vault door in order to keep it secure. We know that that's not right. It's not factual. It's not based in reason. It's not based in good solid understanding of how technology works. So we're changing the way we believe about technology and expanding with the times. When I look at relevant technology related to evidence management, I see the world going in four different directions, or one direction, four different applications. We'll work on the metaphor later. Cell phones are soon going to be able to do everything that you can do on a PDA or a computer screen. Data entry, system transactions, doing things like audits and inventories, barcode scanning, signature capture, document scanning. All that you can do on a cell phone just as well as you can do it on almost any other device or technology. And then we're moving towards cloud storage and cloud-based apps. I would be very hesitant to look at anything that's not based in the cloud. There are certain, I mean, I I can't just underscore that enough to say that cloud storage is becoming an increasingly important technology that everyone is relying on. And sometimes you shouldn't do things because everybody else does it. But with cloud storage, you probably should, because local servers are terrible. Uh, Wireless devices, you shouldn't have anything tethered to anything anymore. So all you really need in this world, you still need a barcode scanner because cell phones aren't quite there, but we won't need them forever. You need a barcode scanner. You need labels. You need labels that are polypropylene. We'll talk more about this when we talk about packaging, but I love labels so much I wanted to mention it again, with permanent adhesive. And then you need yourself a good old fashioned thermal transfer label printer with wax resin ribbon. It's so beautiful. There's mine. You can probably see it behind me. I don't even work in law enforcement, but I still have one of those because I love them so much.
Wait,
Uh,
wait. You have a barcode printer in your office?
yes, right, right.
Oh my goodness.
Right here. And it just makes me feel
Talk
comfy.
about talk about taking your work home with you.
I feel I feel better about me when I've got one. Uh, we're gonna skip digital evidence. If you were here for digital evidence, I apologize. That was just to get you in the door and make you come back. So we will discuss that more. It is 2:59, and in the interest of time, if you need to bow out or if you need to hop off the phone, uh, feel free to do so. Thank you for being here. We will be back next week with digital evidence, evidence packaging, and another topic, because we're going to skip through that and look at all that great information that you'll be exposed to next week. That's information that you just can't replace. Oh, but here's one
Can
last
I
thing I want to say about. Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead?
No, you go
No,
ahead.
just real just real quick. I wanted to apologize. Christy let me know that I had some wind on my microphone, so I apologize for that. And Ron, Ron had made a comment about the staples in the video and that their agency does not use staples. for obvious reasons, not a good sealing material for chain of custody, and it has the possibility of injuring you if the staples cut you. So just to make clarification, we don't believe in staples either. We use the tamper-proof sealing tape. The only staples you saw was the adherence of the tag. We use kind of a two-part method. We staple a color-coded tag onto the item that identifies the year and the type of evidence. And then we also have a barcode label that's on it, just in the event the tag gets torn off or separated from it. So I just wanted to make that point clear as well. And thanks to all of you folks that sent in. Madison, there's a ton of people that sent in that are just looking for a little bit more information about things. And I think I've distributed my personal or my work email and also the Facebook evidence management page. So feel free to hit us up. We always are looking for questions. Thanks, Sean.
You bet. I'm going to go through some of the other questions here, just kind of wrap these up as they come in. Again, we'll be back, same bat time, same bat channel. I'm going to work from the bottom up. What kind of labels did you say they should be? Well, we'll talk more about this in depth, and it'll be in the notes when we talk about packaging. But my belief is that labels should last the duration of custody of that item. And so we can't determine that when we submit the stuff, and we can't distinguish between what items we're submitting. I mean, you might submit on the same day evidence related to an unsolved homicide, which you're going to keep right next to forever. And the other, you might be submitting a little one-hitter pipe. And I mean, in Texas, that's still a felony, but you know, that it's not going to be there nearly as long. But regardless, you need to put that on a label that's going to last for the homicide or the paraphernalia case when it's eventually inevitably dropped. So for that, you need a permanent label. Permanent labels, I believe, and I could be corrected by industry if I am wrong, but polypropylene labels, they're basically a polyester material. When you have a polyester material that's not going to rot, it's not going to crack, it's not going to fade, that's a great substrate for a label. When you put a label on something, you want it to stay there. And for that, you need a permanent adhesive. And so polypropylene label with a permanent adhesive. And then I like to see them printed with a thermal transfer printer. Thermal transfer printers are designed to print permanently on labels, or at least as long as the label is going to last. Direct thermal printers, I learned this the hard way. Direct thermal is what they print store receipts on. And if you've ever gone to the grocery store and wadded up a label and thrown it in the floorboard of your pickup, then you'll know that paper fades over time and the print fades on it over time. That's a direct thermal process. So thermal transfer, polypropylene labels, and permanent adhesive. So if that didn't push everyone away, let's see. Going through. Oh, hey, tell them about James, your YouTube channel.
Oh, Vimeo.
Yeah.
I just have a couple of videos posted on Vimeo, kind of promotional videos and stuff, but it's nothing educational, really more just property evidence eye candy, so to speak.
Well, and join that Facebook community forum for those. James is being modest. I mean, I like the stuff he posts. So he will post it on the Facebook community forum, and you can look those up there. Let's see. Look, a sample manual. Where can I find the sample manual? If you go to our website and on the chat window at the bottom, all of those links are there. It should be evidencemanagement.com/login. You can sign up on our site and access those that are kind of behind the wall. Those are all available there on our website.
Yeah, and just parlaying off of that, I have several different agency policy and procedure manuals. So if you're ever looking for something, you know, your agency may not be the same as ours in terms of size and responsibility. So please feel free to email me, and I'll send you a few different agencies that have approved their policy and procedure for release to the general public, or at least to property evidence folks.
All right. And now, because I'm old and addled and I can't follow the linear track of the questions, let's see. most relevant, would it make sense to post the relevant questions asked during each session? Yes, it would make tons of sense. I'll try to screenshot them and we'll try to do some of that. I'm going to read through this. Talking about automation, our chain of custody is on a property sheet. Yes, it's well, okay. The question is, they've got a chain of custody system that's initiated on a paper property receipt. When the item goes through the intake, it's converted into an electronic form or into a database. Does the chain of custody need to be maintained in parallel on both paper and on the evidence software? And you want to answer the first? I've got very strong, definite opinions on everything. So you want to go first?
Well, I always say a digital chain of custody is a more reliable method of keeping track of something than a matrix with a bunch of people's initials on it. So if you have the ability to create a tamper-proof chain of custody digitally, I would say that would definitely be the way to go. Your
And
thoughts, Sean?
Russell, yeah, I worked at an agency where we did that. We entered the data on paper. A clerk would actually enter the data into a property database, and that didn't work very well for us. That was not a sustainable model. So if you've got a paper process and you can't get away from that at this time, that would be my first recommendation: is get off the paper. But if you can't do that, I would basically create an attachment and put a photocopy of that paper in the electronic document. You want to retain all the documentation associated with an item. If some of it comes in on paper, that can be stored as a record. Now, I don't know the laws in your particular state or jurisdiction, but in many jurisdictions, a photocopy or a stored electronic copy of an original copy carries the same weight and value in terms of being a record that the actual paper does. If you're in one of those states where your records laws allow that, I would scan it and then trash the other paper copy. You might have different laws in your state, but that's a recommendation that I would make. And Emily Kane says that Washington has a property and evidence email group. And I'm not sure if we're talking about Washington State or DC, but that's awesome. So if it's Washington State, I would love to hear more about it. If anyone from Washington State or DC would like to share, I would love to make available and make people aware of any local state, even if it's just a casual, non-official, non-501c3 group, just to let people know about those things, because there is very little that. And here's a question from Daniel: are the session one notes from last week available on the evidencemanagement.com website? Yes, they are. Same place. If you go to evidencemanagement.com and log in and create a little account, I won't sell you insurance. I won't phone call you because I have trouble just answering my own phone. But yeah, all that information will be there and it'll be available behind that evidencemanagement.com login site. Oh, more questions.
Awesome.
Yes, it was Washington State. So Emily says that there is an email group in Washington State. I know of a couple of people that have tried to work uh, and to create a group and create community up in the Pacific Northwest in Oregon and Washington. So if there is something, please send it to me at Sean@evidencemanagement.com. Would love to make that known as much as I possibly can. Got one last comment, and then we're gonna pop smoke here. Parallel or duplicate maintenance? Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know what Mr. Sullivan's or Miss, I don't know what person Sullivan's first name is or their gender, but it makes that person makes a good point. You can only do that parallel or duplicate data maintenance if you've got a technology system that you can rely on. So yeah, that should be maybe a caveat there. But other than that, we're going to call it a day. We'll put this online. I won't. Somebody that does that better than me will. But thank you for being here. We hope to see you next week. We will talk about digital evidence. We'll talk about evidence packaging and intake processes. We'll try to catch up in session 3, and we'd love to see you back. If you have comments, questions, or concerns, please email them to me. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, James, for being here.
Thank you, Sean, for having me.